Okay. Okay, so our speaker tonight is Rick Hefner, who is Executive Director of Caltech Center for Technology and Management Education. He designs and delivers professional and executive training to technology-driven organizations and individuals. He's a certified Lean Six Sigma Black Belt with over 40 years of data-driven systems improvement experience. And he's guided over 20 Fortune 500 organizations through transformations that link quality management to strategic value. So would you like to take over, Rick, from here and maybe add something to that?
Wow. Well, thanks. I think that's a very nice introduction here. So thank you for the opportunity to speak here, and I want to share with you some ideas that come out of Caltech. So my role, Executive Director of the Caltech Center for Technology and Management Education, the center is Caltech's professional training group. And so I'm blessed to have 30 AI instructors on my staff. We teach about 20 different AI courses to different clients. Primarily what we do is custom build things for clients. And I'm excited about the opportunity to kind of address the Phoenix chapter of the ASQ. Um, I guess I'll have to start by saying I'm glad you guys are kind of having other speakers on AI. I have never seen a technology in my 40 plus years of being in the industry. I have not seen a technology that's so radically changing how we do business. And so what I want to do is give you some exposure today to some ideas from my perspective. I spent about 15 years as a quality leader, in charge of a group of about 150 quality engineers working all kinds of different projects. I've worked with lots of different companies, and I think that you're going to find that AI is really a game changer when it comes to quality engineering. So let the set the stage here. I want to go over some definitions just to kind of square it up. And then I want to spend most of my time talking about two aspects of the problem. Quality for AI. So what does quality engineering look like when it's applied to a system or a service that has AI components? And then AI for quality. How can you personally use AI tools in the quality engineering functions that you perform each and every day? And then I want to leave you with a little bit of a personal action plan. And I'll give you a heads up now. I'm going to make you a free offer for some free training that you can take from Caltech, from some of our expert AI instructors at the very end. So please hang around here. Feel free to stop and interrupt me with questions if you have them during the talk, if they're in the context of the slides I'm presenting. And I'll also leave a little time, hopefully, at the end for some more discussion. So let's start with the real fundamental definitions. What is artificial intelligence? Boy, unless you've been hiding under a rock, you probably can't escape that. You've seen so much of it in in everyday communications, publicly available materials, etc. For our purposes here, we're going to say a machine has artificial intelligence if it can interpret data and potentially learn from that data and then use that knowledge to adapt and achieve specific goals. And it can take all kinds of different dimensions within that broad sphere of things. There's just a little bit of a graphic that kind of shows, where we see artificial intelligence. See, I think early on, we talked about things like planning and optimization, expert systems. We all remember things like Big Blue, playing Jeopardy, etc. But what we're seeing now is much more broader applications. Robotics has been an area where we're seeing lots and lots of implementation of AI implementation. Another big area is natural language processing. So tools like Siri and Alexa, etc., have meant a huge influx of money into the companies that build commercial products that do language processing, and we're the beneficiaries of that and things like Google Translate. These days, when I travel internationally, I just put my phone um, uh, up against signs, and it translates things. I've had long conversations with people where I don't speak their language and they don't speak English, but we use Google Translate to translate back and forth. So, tremendous time savers and conveniences for our life. You're also seeing in industry many of the things on the top area here. So a lot of different dimensions of machine learning. We'll talk a little bit about those in a second. Other things, text to speech, speech to text, and especially vision. So we work with about 20 different companies at the center, helping them implement AI strategies, helping them define AI strategies, training the people that are going to implement this. And I see lots of uses of AI in the automotive world, in the aerospace world, in agriculture. A number of folks probably represented by the folks on this call tonight. So everything from systems that can pick oranges by looking up into the orange trees in a grove, identifying the ones that are ripe and sending a robotic arm to pick them, to autonomous cars. I will tell you, a couple months ago, I was in Phoenix for an event, and I decided to take one of your Waymo cars, and was very excited. It got me safely from my restaurant to the airport, and it's just interesting to see that. So if you haven't taken that, you can find it very interesting. A couple other things to think about. Machine learning, several different types of machine learning, and you often hear kind of AL/MI talked about in the same things. So supervised learning is where I take an algorithm and I show it distinct things that I've labeled. And I want it to learn to recognize the characteristics of those, and then be able to apply that. So for example, John Deere has a um, has a device called See and Spray, and it has been taught the differences between healthy plants and weeds, and sick plants by showing a bunch of pictures of each. And so now that See and Spray device can be pulled behind a tractor, and it can look with cameras, identify each plant, and either leave it alone as a healthy plant, give it a shot of fertilizer if it's sickly, or hit it with some pesticide if it's a weed. Unsupervised learning, a little bit more advanced. That's where we just give it a bunch of pictures, a bunch of text of things, and we ask it to figure out what's going on. So we might load in a bunch of pictures, and it eventually learns that there's some plants that sort of look one way, and there's some plants that sort of look one way. It doesn't really know whether to label those, healthy or weed, but eventually it just learns that these two things are different, and so it can tell the difference between a healthy plant, even though we never told it which was a healthy plant, which was a weed. And then finally, reinforcement learning. That's where we give an algorithm some sort of a reward function. And then we ask it to train itself by trying to optimize the reward function. So in robotics, very common to design a system where the robot might be penalized by hitting an obstacle. And so as it tries to optimize its movements, it learns what kind of movements will keep it by avoiding objects. A couple of terminologies, then we're going to get to the main meat of the talk here. Natural language processing, NLP, define that. So very broad term, meaning a machine's ability to understand conversation or language, right? So if I tell Siri or Alexa to play a song by the Beatles, it recognizes the context of that and says, okay, this is not the Beatle bug, this is the Beatle group, and then can find and play that. If I ask it the score of a favorite team, it knows that I want the current score if there's a game going on now, or it wants last night's score if there's no game tonight. Same thing with the weather, etc. And we can make some fairly complicated queries to these natural language processors, and they do terribly well. Generative AI is all over the news right now. So large language models like ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, etc., are able to learn from artifacts, from data, and basically be answered questions. So those all depend what sort of documents or information's been loaded into those. Most generative AI large language models these days have been loaded with the entire internet. So we can take something like ChatGPT and say, find a good recipe for brownies, and it will go off there, and it has the ability to make judgments, things like what might be a good recipe or a bad recipe. Or it might be able to pick in context and say, do you want the low carb one or the high carb one? Is calories important? So, and we can load all kinds of things. You're seeing lots and lots of improvements lately in image processing. So we've probably all seen examples where people have generated an image. And you can generate very realistic images that look like real photos, which are non-human beings that don't exist, or scenes that never exist. A good way to try this for free is the tool of choice right now is a tool called Nano Banana, which is an online version which is free to use. So I want to move from those general definitions. Any questions with those before I kind of move on? Okay, I want to move into a more general discussion of how quality is influenced by AI. And I really want to kind of postulate two questions. One is, how is quality engineering different when I'm working with AI components? Does the function of what we do as quality engineers change just because the system has some AI components, a natural language processing module, or some other optimization module? And also, how could AI and how is AI changing the way that quality engineering is being performed? So I'm going to look at those two issues. And let's see, some kind of cutesy acronyms. You're seeing something called Q for AI, meaning quality for AI, where we're leveraging quality management principles and methodologies to develop AI systems or systems that have AI components. So we're thinking about just the AI tools, and you'll see all kind of literature, especially on the ASQ side, about quality 4.0, kind of this next revolution in quality. And then also AI for Q, which is referring to how do I apply AI tools and techniques to quality functions? Can they support our quality management processes? How do AI tools speed up decision making and optimization? Can we apply quality principles? And you sometimes see this on places like the ASQ website as AI quality. So both of those issues, we're going to explore those two in a little bit. Okay, let's start with Q for AI. How do we do that? And I want to talk about some things that are different when we're using AI components. And so maybe some of you have already using AI components here. But traditionally, when we've applied quality engineering, things like testing, etc., to a system, those systems' behavior has largely been deterministic, and requirements have been relatively stable. Now, I've never been on a project that the requirements didn't change from the start to beginning, but typically they're not. The behavior of a system is relatively well characterized. Now, if I start putting in AI components, now I've got some variability. Because the AI systems are learning, because they're adapting their behavior as they're exposed to more data, more situations, etc., we're going to see some variability, which hopefully we can characterize statistically we're going to see probabilistic outcomes. So you might ask, how many times might Siri understand what your query might be over thousands of queries, right? So there's going to be new requirements, new ideas that kind of come out of that. Also, again, so differences in traditional systems, we can't fully specify the expected behavior. We know it's going to learn and change and hopefully get better over time. And so if I'm doing verification testing, I've now got to step up my game. I've got to do more statistical tests. I may have to create some synthetic data, which I may have had to do even in a traditional system. And I have to think about adversarial testing. Can I give a system an input that it doesn't expect? What does that even mean? Recently, there was one of the autonomous taxis that drove through a police barrier because it had never seen that type of a barrier, and so it didn't really know how to interpret that. So we have to put that kind of mindset on. And we can't our acceptance criteria really end up with confidence intervals. You can always find something that causes an AI system to fail in some way. So it's not a simple pass fail. I think it's really a mindset for quality professionals. So classic QA now becomes lifecycle long and data centric. My question is, would a system work under the types of data that it's going to realistically see? And how do I investigate or create data sets, and how much testing is enough, because it may always see some unique situation that it hadn't seen before. And extends across the life cycle with now machine learning ops, pipelines, and quality gates, et cetera. I'm going to have to think about it as the system is upgrading itself. Do I need to continually do quality assurance over the life of a system as it learns, as it changes its behavior? Can I still be convinced that the behavior is as expected or as desired? I think there's three dimensions that I think about when I think about quality for AI. The first is data. One of the things we're finding out in quality assurance is we're much, much more dependent upon data than we might have expected. The system learns from data, and the limits in terms of our abilities of our AI systems are really just limited by the amount of data that we're able to feed them. So, for example, if you had a database with every cancer case that ever occurred in the entire world and you had the right kind of data on it, you could probably feed it into an AI engine, and with a little bit of calculation, you could probably come up with a cure for cancer. The problem is we just can't get a hold of all that data. We don't even have that data available. And if we put bad data in, we're also gonna see bad responses from that. If I train something backwards that dogs are cats and cats are dogs, right? It's going to take a while for it to figure out that I've trained it incorrectly. So I think that the unique dimensions for AI is the training data that we use is going to have to be complete, representative, unbiased, and relevant. One of the examples of failure in this area, for example, is many companies use AI tools to look through an initial set of applicants for a job. And if the person who designs or trains those resume review systems is biased, or if the data it's based on it is biased, then the review is going to be biased. So very simply, a company that's traditionally hired maybe white males, right, or promoted white males over other parts of their population, right? If you look at that population and say, gosh, the conclusion I draw is white males tend to do better at this company, it's going to have a bias towards that in reviewing reviews. So we have to be aware of that. The other thing is that the data is going to deteriorate over time. So we do have ideas called data drift and concept drift, which mean that data that may originally have kept the system on may allow the system to drift in terms of its performance. So how does that impact quality? Well, I think we need to start thinking about the mind shift towards from kind of reactive work in quality engineering to more proactive or predictive work. So not just inspecting a bunch of documents, but now inspecting data. The systems don't run on the documents, right? So we got to have sampling plans. We got to look at data quality. We got to talk about acceptance criteria for training data sets. That means new KPIs, key performance indices, right? To talk about data. It means looking at data governance rights, proprietary data, how do we safeguard company data? I may want to look at preventative maintenance by loading in all the failures we've seen out in the field. But that failure data is probably highly proprietary. So how do I share that, and who do I share that with, and how do I put the right guardrails up? Labeling processes, and a lot of statistical quality controls. So it's much like manufacturing inspecting systems. I need to decide what's good data, what's bad data, what's a good data set, what's a bad data set, and review data in the same way that we have kind of traditionally reviewed requirements baselines. Because now that's just like systems we built in the past were based on requirements. Now our new systems are based on data. Second dimension of the three here is model quality. AI models, exhibit probabilistic and non-deterministic behavior. Right? We all know about hallucinations that the systems are possible. They can behave differently in different environments or when fed with different types of data over their operation, which means we're going to have to start measuring performance statistically. Accuracy or precision or recall, other kinds of issues relative to how a model might respond to a unique data set. There's a whole field that's branched out now called AI explainability. When the AI system comes up with an answer, can it explain that answer in a way that allows me to validate that the answer is appropriate? And if you think about it, we as humans have that same kind of problem. You sometimes say, "Oh, did you like the brownies? Yeah, they were great. Well, what made them great? I got to think about it a minute. I'm not quite sure. It's easy to characterize it, maybe more difficult to figure out what's leading me to that characterization or explaining intuition. Gosh, I just feel like this person is lying. Well, what is it? Yeah, I don't know. I just have that sixth sense, right? So we don't want that kind of sense in an AI model. AI explainability is trying to address that. And then, of course, adaptive learning, the need for retraining, et cetera, becomes important. So how does that change our quality function? Well, we got to get a lot better on statistics if we're not, right? Because now we've got to talk about model performance with confidence intervals, et cetera. We're going to have to add additional verification and validation modes, especially looking at stress testing and sensitivity and corner conditions, et cetera. Model versions go through, changes, and so we got to think about configuration control.
Day today. This week has gone by so quickly, but it has been.
Yeah, someone's on. Maybe the host can mute whoever's talking. And then acceptance criteria, not simple pass fail anymore. And we kind of talked about the MLOps pipelines and the need for retraining cycles and revalidation in these cycles. Third dimension of the three, operational quality. And just recognizing that because AI systems adapt over time, right, then the quality of such a system's got to be verified continuously. So based on the data it sees, based on the environments that it sees, based on algorithmic drift and domain shift, even new user behaviors, right? When we have a natural language processor like Siri or Alexa, they typically learn what happens over time and they can adjust it. My Alexa knows if I'm whispering, it should whisper back. It knows if I talk about baseball, I'm talking about the Los Angeles Dodgers, right? So things like that. And then if we monitor systems, make sure they're working right. Sometimes these drifts and shifts are very subtle, and so we want to catch them any errors before they show up. So it makes our job continuous, right? Not just certain points in the life cycle. It changes the KPIs we look at. We're going to be participating more in failures and helping people diagnosing what happened in failures and recognizing the need to roll back to previous versions and retrain, etc. Much more implications too in terms of the test beds that we create and the telemetry or data that we collect there. Partly we want to understand, did the AI model experience a situation which wasn't in something we trained? It wasn't a use case that we had recognized, right? We taught the autonomous taxi how to pick up somebody, but we didn't look at the use case where they might try to open the door in the middle of the ride, for example, on the freeway. Let's see. Let me shift now and talk a little about AI for Q, the use of AI in quality engineering functions. How does AI change what they do? And I'm going to talk about 4 areas here. And I'll give you just a little table kind of showing that. The first area, quality control and inspection, right? So lots of things we can use here. We can use the computer vision. We can use machine learning, deep learning, etc. And you're already seeing a lot of this in industry in the manufacturing areas, things like spotting surface blemishes, comparing dimensions to specifications, etc. So just the whole inspection, AI's ability to learn and recognize where defects might occur and to recognize different kinds of things that might not naturally show up as defect. All good inspectors learn over job and they get better with experience, and AI systems just do that. They just do it much, much, much faster. Quality assurance and prediction, lots of work in the failure area, from root cause analysis to preventative maintenance, from even looking at things like supplier risk. Being able to process large amounts of information, like huge records on warranty data or customer return data, et cetera, and analyze that and give us more of a sense of voice of customer. One of the places AI really shines is just looking through large amounts of data and extracting information and knowledge that we can use out of that. 2 other areas, software quality and testing. Probably seen things like zombie coding where people are using AI systems to write code. In similar ways, we can use systems to create test cases and test data and to executable test scripts, etc. We can use it to fix a broken test script once we've changed material, etc. So we can speed that testing process and make it much, much more efficient. And then quality management systems, documentation, etc. Again, capitalizing on the power of natural language processing to go off and look at all kinds of things and help us. I think we're going to be moving away from document-centric areas, if you still have any of that, much more to just simply retaining all the information in databases that the AI systems can access and take advantage of. The bottom line is, people say, well, is AI gonna replace jobs? My feeling in quality engineering is the QAs that know AI will simply have jobs where other QEs will not, because they're going to be so much better, cheaper, faster in terms of what they do. So I want to shift over and talk a little bit about a personal action plan now, given all this. Before I talk about that, any questions about materials presented so far? And you could throw something in the chat. I've got my chat window open in case that's easier for you to add a question here.
Question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So you mentioned a lot of examples of areas where we can apply AI for quality improvement. And so do we have any examples or case studies where these have been implemented, or these are still at the beginning stage?
So the dirty little secret is lots and lots of companies are doing everything on this slide, on those slides. So every one of those is implemented by dozens of companies. What they're not doing is making a lot of that information public because the advantages, the increases in speed and efficiency and quality are so great that it becomes a huge competitive advantage. So I know a lot of our clients have already implemented a lot of these changes. But the ones that really do it well are very, very hush hush about it. I can give things like public, like Boeing, for example. Boeing, for their maintenance of their fleet, right? It's all predictive maintenance now with AI systems and dashboards as well. You're also starting to see something called AI agents used a lot more. And again, the people that are doing that are very quiet. An AI agent can be given kind of a broader task and can go off and marshal resources to fix that broader task. If you want to think about it in terms of science fiction, right? Think of the robots that build systems in movies like Star Wars. Now you can get AI agents that monitor the stock market, that monitor communications, buying patterns, etc. We work with a couple of different entertainment companies that are using AI agents to basically track and create personal marketing approaches just for you. So it watches your buying habits and then it changes the type of commercials you see, the type of way it pitches to things, much more than, hey, people who like the book you just bought also like this book. These are people changing on the fly in very sophisticated ways. So yeah, companies are out there doing all of this. You just don't see them talking about it very much in open literature.
Thank you.
So let's see. Someone put in the chat here, we talked about quality documentation going away. And regulated industries still have required documentation. That's true now. I suspect that will change. One of the dimensions a lot of our clients are is aerospace and defense. And I will tell you that as the contractors go digital, what you see is no longer document-driven acquisition. DoD customers, for example, are now simply building models and looking at models of things and discussing things at that level. And that's how they're communicating what they want and how contractors are communicating their designs. And much more powerful because now customers and stakeholders can evaluate concerns, do simulations, other things to do much, much deeper evaluation. So I think that's an artifact of how we got here. I would expect to see that change over the next decade. A couple other questions in the chat while we're here. Where do you see small implements implementing these tools? I see a lot of Gen AI. It's interesting when industry looks about it. If you look at kind of trend documents, it's a lot of things, AI trends, etc. You can pick up lots of documents on the web on it. Basically, what they see is small, medium companies adopting Gen AI at the individual level a lot. Sometimes there isn't a corporate strategy for injecting AI components into products, but they still see the advantages of it. And you can get a lot of really quick efficiencies just by using Gen AI, and I'm going to show you a couple here in just a minute. But a more broadly strategy, industry is actually kind of slow to adopt this, and especially large corporations. I think that's interesting. It's an interesting phenomenon. We talk about it in the AI community all the time. I think part of the issue is a lot of these large companies are afraid to make a misstep. They're afraid to implement an AI approach and have it be obsolete next week. And I will tell you that the industry is moving so quickly, whatever I do this week is not optimal. That said, I think in our action plan, we'll talk about some things you can do that have some lasting effect. And one of them is to learn Gen AI. And Natasha's asking about what training, and that's a perfect lead in to the slide I have up in front of you now here. So here's what I recommend to you, someone who spent, a couple of decades in the quality assurance, quality engineering world. First of all, start shifting your mindset from I'm trying to catch mistakes to I'm trying to predict and enable success, right? So a lot of people say, well, I can do things faster with AI. Yeah, that's true, right? But the real value of AI is to predict defects. Okay, so I can catch them before they start impacting my life cycle, right? And prioritizing, since I can't exhaustively test things now, what do I test based on risk? Where is the areas that we're most likely to make mistakes? And then in the automating analysis, things like root cause analysis, you can do a lot of automation there. So shift your mind a little bit and also just embrace augmentation. Don't think of it, oh my God, AI is going to replace me. No, AI is an assistant. It's not a replacement. And think of areas where it can take over some of your repetitive high volume tasks. I know it's when I was doing quality engineering, test case maintenance was always a huge problem, and especially for regression testing, et cetera. That frees you up to do quality assurance, quality engineering, high value work. I think of it like a calculator. When calculators came, everybody thought, well, we shouldn't use calculators because then we won't be able to do math longhand. Nobody does math longhand anymore. But instead of taking the time to do that, it's made that process more efficient. Think about new fundamentals, and especially around data. So the folks that are doing really well right now are data scientists and data analysts, right? Because they've learned to work statistically with data, and they can answer questions like what data is relevant to train a model. We'll need to know that as QEs, because we'll need to be able to say to developers, no, that's not the right data set, or that data set's not complete enough, right? And then be able to cleaning up data sets, being able to acquire new data sets from other places. I think it's very, very important. So we'll need to be much more focused on data than we have been in the past. And then finally, integrating AI into existing workflows. We're going to show you some prompt engineering here just for a couple minutes and show you that. But I think you've got to learn prompt engineering. How do you craft clear, structured, and effective prompts? And then also know, where does AI have limitations? Where is AI strong? Things like pattern recognition or high volume work that can be automated. That's really where you see people using AI tools now. Other tasks are inherently interpersonal. So like interpreting business context is tough sometimes for an AI engine to figure out, or areas where you use human intuition. I use AI on a daily basis now, and a lot of it is to get past the drudgery parts of what I do, or to create first drafts that then I can apply my insights to. Yeah, that's interesting, but that's not the way the customer really wants to see it. Let me modify that. Or to take a look at something I've done and make a recommendation. Gee, how can you punch this up? How can you make this better? So it's that combination of human intelligence and artificial intelligence that I think is our success going forward. So I want to give you a little bit of an explanation for how this works. So we're gonna try something. And first of all, I'm not going to have a lot of time to spend today, but in terms of prompt engineering, you want to learn how this works. So to create a prompt for a large language model, you basically remember the acronym RADO. Define the role that you want, the action that you want to take, that you want the model to perform, the detail. Okay, help it with context so it understands the difference. That'll really, really cut down on hallucinations, right? The sort of output you want to see in terms of both what are you looking for? Do you want it formatted or styled in a certain way? Do you want a detailed or a lengthy response, etc.? And especially examples. If you can show, here's an example of what I'm looking for, it's able to much better hone in on the sort of responses that you want. two other pieces to think about too. Hallucinations. Hallucinations are actually less of an issue than most people think about it. But one of the really simple things you can do with a model is say, explain your reasoning. And then you can look at the reasoning and see if it's sound. Sometimes I've got something that sort of looks at a hallucination and I've asked the model, are you sure? And that's a clue for the model to think about it more deeply. It's really no different than working with an assistant. So if I ask an assistant to go research a competitor, for example, and they came back, in an hour and they had kind of a competitive analysis, I might say, parts of this doesn't feel right. Can you put some more energy into this? And they go off and spend another couple hours and they come back with a much better answer for me. AI engines work the same way. So explain your reasoning, or some of my instructors actually take the output from one model, put it in another model, and ask it to check it, like I'm asking a colleague to check some other colleague's work. And then optimizing your prompt. One of the nice things is most of the publicly available large language models will, once they complete stuff, they'll start to figure out where you're going or why you might be asking questions this way. And they'll start to ask you, gee, did you want this or that? Or I've got two ways I could look at it. Or would you want me to also develop this or that? And we're going to see some examples of that in a minute. You can also just specifically prompt it by saying, ask me clarifying questions to understand my task. Again, think of it like you're talking to an assistant. If you gave them something and you weren't sure they really understood, you could say, what questions do you want to ask me so you know exactly what I'm looking for, and kind of drive it from there. Okay, so we're going to actually use AI here, and I'm going to just do a real quick demonstration using Microsoft's Copilot. I use Copilot, Gemini, and ChatGPT on a regular basis. They all have kind of their advantages. We're going to create a prompt here, and you can kind of see the thing. And we're going to try a couple of different QA tasks just to see how that might work. So I am going to move some spaces around here. And I'm going to open up Copilot. Okay. Let's see, can everybody see my screen? Someone confirm they can see my screen?
We can see your screen.
Okay, good, thank you. All right, so let's do something. So we've got this chat, all right, window open, and I'm going to start by just telling it. So I'm going to organize my chat, and again, I could be, I can make this a lot detailed, but just for this, I'm going to say you. So I'm going to say you are an experienced quality engineer. I'm telling it kind of what role, what hat to put on in the automotive sector, on a team, designing and building an autonomous taxi. And so the first task I'm going to give it, so I've kind of defined who we are here. If I could spell, autonomous, right? Taxi, and I can say review the provided requirements for ambiguity. All right, let me just copy all this down. Do a cut and paste just to save us a little time here. Okay, and it tries to make a graphic out of what I gave it. Right, provide for ambiguity, blah, 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 provide a corrective action and rationale for each fix. Now, one of the things I can do is I can load up a requirement spec. And so I'm going to upload here a little requirement spec that I'm working on, and I made one that has some problems with it. All right, so we'd have something to do. So I have a little requirement spec I have. Now again, when you're using documents, you're uploading things, there's possibility of exposing those to the world. So you want to make sure you follow your organization's guidelines for how to safely use that. Some organizations have a firewall set up. They have a special version. There's other ways to set up firewalls with these. So at this point, this is not anything proprietary. I'm going to do it. So I've got my requirement spec. If I open my requirement spec, just open that so you guys can see what we're talking about here. So give it a second. Of course, everything's going to go slow here today. Anyway, I've got to. Okay, well. Okay, so here's what my requirement spec looks like. All right, so I just got a set of requirements here. Okay, so very simple, but I could put a much bigger one if I wanted to. And now I just say go. Okay, and very quickly, it's done that thing. So it takes the first requirement, car shall drive safely in all conditions, and starts to identify issues, right? And provides a corrected version. It even gives me a rationale. And I think that's really important that you ask for a rationale, because you also want to learn. So I think of these large language models as also tutors. Help me understand. I never have them write an email for me. I write the email and I say, look at this email and tell me how I can make it better and explain your rationale. And they say, hey, this phrase is overused, or this phrase could be misinterpreted, or this might come off root, et cetera. And so I'm learning that same thing. That's how we prevent ourselves from replacing our capabilities here. So you can see it goes through all the requirements and just gives us some quick things, right? And then it even says, okay, can I see what you're doing? Would you like me to compile these into a document or create a comparison table? So again, it can kind of anticipate what we're doing and then try to do something better. I'm going to go off and do something different, though. I'm going to give it a second command, and I'm going to say, identify any safety critical or mission critical rules that appear weak or underspecified. Suggest alternative. All right. So these are tasks that I might do as a quality engineer. And so now it's going to go off and do specifically what I want and give me things like alternative. Here's a stronger alternative. All right. And here's my rationale. All right. And so I could do this with any requirement spec. I could load a requirement spec in, and it's going to not only do that, but I could then ask it to do that. Here's some other options. It says, okay, here's the summary, and here's a priority list. Now, if I was doing this with a piece of paper in my computer, this might have taken me a day. And I did it now in about 5 seconds. All right. I can draft compliance matrices. I can do that against standards. I can create a priorities list, etc. But let's do another one here. Let's ask to do task 3 here, which is identify any safety critical or mission critical requirements that appear. I'm sorry, we did that one. Let's see. Evaluate the requirements against the supplied standard. So many of you have a standard, could be a coding standard, or let's assume we have a requirement standard for our company, right? And so now I can upload a standard, right? Could be a template, could be other things, right? And so I've got a bunch of rules here that I've added. Okay, so this is a standard that I happen to get off the internet. And so here's what that standard looks like. Pop that up here. Just a second. Let's see what this document is. Okay, so you can see this is a big section, bunch of rules that are labeled R1, R2, etc. Right? Okay, let's see what it does. Okay, so again, going off to those requirements, looking at that, now it actually recognizes where that standard came from, and then says I applied all these rules, and here's where I find. Here's the first requirement. It violates rules R7, R26, R34, R7. Right, it's non-compliant. Right. So, and very quickly now, I've looked at this compliance against it, and then it's also given me a whole set of stronger alternatives. So not only do I have what's wrong, but I have something better. Now, I might look at that and say, oh, I don't want to use this standard. I want to use a different standard we have, or well, I don't want it to be 2 seconds. I want it to be 4 seconds, right? So I'm still going to put my insight into it, but the more it does it, the more it is. If I had a good example of a requirement spec, I would load that in. If I had partial design, so I can do all kinds of processing with this and do much better. Okay, so let's go back here and share my screen. So again, I think it's essential for a quality engineer at least learn generative AI, use whatever tools your company is providing, follow the guidelines that they're giving you. And if you'd like to learn a lot about it, please use this QR code in the corner, or go to the website on the bottom of the page, look up AI Tools for Everyone. I am making this course available free to all ASQ Phoenix members and to anybody else in your corporation you want to pass it on to, or to friends and family. Maybe you have a young college student who would like to take an AI course from Caltech. But it's a freely available course. Just sign up for it so we can send the information, give you access to it. It's available either as an on-demand course or as a live remote course, Zoom presentation like we're doing now, a series of courses. And you're going to learn about the top 6 courses in the space of an 8-hour course. You're going to learn about the top 6 courses, or 6 tools that are out there that are freely available, that you can use for solving various AI tasks. And you're going to get a couple of hours on different use cases that you might use for that. Okay. So I'm going to return to the chat window, see what other things we have, and then I'll take some more questions. So comment here in the chat window. You talk a lot about automation. What do you see cases to use dumb automation, like using Power Automate versus smart automation using RA? I have Power Automate flows that I use, Aon models, and some alone, but a lot of the automation, like communications, can be done. Yeah, sometimes you don't need the power of an AI engine. You just need kind of a rule-based system that says if you see X, do Y, right? Where AI tools are good are where you're trying to automate something where it takes some sort of learning capability to recognize things. If you're picking oranges, right, you want to you learn. Maybe the first day you pick, you don't really understand the difference between a ripe orange and a non-ripe orange, or a diseased orange. You learn that over time, and so you could so those kind of things are better. I will also say, kind of in a related sense, initially what most companies do and most individuals do is they automate current workflows. What happens later on is that you actually come up with different workflows that use the power of the AI tool. And that's really where you start to get the really dramatic increases in that. So the fact that I can learn, and it takes very little data to get me started, really enables some completely different workflows. You're seeing that now in the entertainment industry, where they're something like making a film has a lot of AI components in it now, and they're making films in a completely different manner. So it's not just automating the way we did business before. Okay. So hopefully that kind of addresses the question. With that, don't see anything else in the chat, so I'm open to answer any more questions that anybody might have.
And a question related to quality of AI solutions itself. You also talked about AI for quality, but the other way around.
Yeah.
Mainly for like a lot of agentic AI solutions, obviously, like you mentioned, are coming up. How are there any standards for measuring quality of these AI solutions that are putting forth, especially depending on the application, whether it's a application where you just leverage and you take suggestions, or it's something like autonomous, that may require even more the stronger quality requirements. So I see that now with so many applications coming up, there needs to be some universal guideline on the quality standards. So what do you know what's going on there?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we're approaching that. I don't think it's where you want it to be yet. People are starting to talk about those kind of standards, but we haven't really seen anything. I'm not aware of anything that's been officially published yet. I would expect we would start to see some of the professional societies adopting, producing some of those standards, or places like NIST, maybe producing standards over the next couple of years. People are more focused on things like AI governance rules. How do I prevent my sensitive data from getting processed? All right, but you will see those coming, I think, in the next 2 years. That's just my gut feeling.
Thank you.
Okay, someone's asking about thoughts about a McDonald's AI commercial that was canceled after a few days on air by being bad. I don't know about this. Rania, you want to come off mute and tell me more about it? I don't know what was bad about it.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I just heard that there was McDonald did an AI commercial in I think the Neverland, and after a few days they used only AI. They let her create like a YouTube video of 45 seconds for Christmas, and like 3 days later they got like tons of criticism on Instagram that it's like the most terrible I don't know, the most terrible commercial, and they just like removed it and made it private less than 3 days later. I just found it kind of amusing. It was all over, it was on the news, so yeah.
So it's interesting. One of the places that you're seeing the fastest advances right now is in image processing. So we're kind of at this cusp. Probably some of you remember using I don't know if any of you remember the old piece of software called Dragon Natural Speaking. Dragon Natural Speaking was supposed to listen to your voice and then transcribe it. So you're going to write letters by just speaking into a microphone. And if you used it back a decade ago, it was just horrific. I mean, it just couldn't do anything else. So that's gotten a lot better now, and you can now do dictation with AI systems, and it works very, very well. It even understands context and goes back and kind of cleans things up. I recently recorded a video for a conference in Latin America, and I speak only kind of Spanglish. I don't speak enough Spanish to really be fluent, and it translated all my remarks into Spanish, and at least the Spanish native speaker said it was very understandable. But kind of if McDonald's created images and created video using AI, it probably felt very artificial, right? Some of you may have seen kind of the deep fake stuff where they try to make maybe a political figure or something, giving a speech on some topic and making the political figure say things that the political figure wouldn't normally say. But that's increasing very, very quickly. Within a couple of years, you will not be able to tell artificially generated video from actual video that somebody might generate. So I think probably McDonald's just got a little ahead of the time in terms of doing that, but you will see very soon AI commercials or commercials generated by AI that you won't notice any difference on. Same thing with if you go online now and you get one of these kind of bots that, chat bots that respond to your questions about, merchandise or a reservation or something. It's pretty easy to spot that that's a chat bot. 2 years from now, you won't be able to spot it. It will seem very human to you. Let's see, a need for risk-based guardrails. Yep, there's a tremendous need. It's in that area called AI governance. And you see that we teach AI governance in our executive classes. Can one input a prompt in our request to not share the data provided? It's not quite that simple, but there are parameters. For example, in Copilot, you can set parameters depending on the Copilot implementation you have that say, don't share my data with the world, right? Companies that really get paranoid about this set up kind of their own unique firewalls so that the data doesn't get outside that. Block usage with criminal intent. That's a really controversial area. So, right now the AI community is debating things like, if I get on ChatGPT and I say, show me how to build a bomb, is that something ChatGPT ought to respond to, right? Show me how to overthrow my government, right? Show me a way to kill myself. Really interesting ethical issues there. And so sometimes trying to identify where somebody has criminal intent or doesn't becomes really challenging. I think we can all look at the extremes. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants zero guardrails, and nobody wants, the thought police kind of checking our every intent. Someplace over the next few years, as a society, we're gonna have to figure out where our guardrails are there now. And then Ronnie sent a little news article here.
Yeah, it's the link to the commercial and like the criticism about it that I
Okay.
talked with the
Well,
AI.
we'll have to look at that soon. That looks funny. I'll have to look at that. Nini says NVIDIA. Okay, NVIDIA. Right. By the way, people ask me all the time, who should I invest money in? Who in the AI community is going to be out on top? Nobody knows, including all the AI experts. I'm dumping all my money in NVIDIA because they build the hardware, and regardless of who wins on the algorithm side, the hardware people are going to win. NVIDIA released reports of that small language models will increase pulse. What's more so than large language models? What's your thought on that? Yeah, I think there's going to be a definite small language model is trained on a very narrow domain. So they're simpler to run. They take less energy, etc. And I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities for small language models. Think about Alexa in your household. Alexa doesn't need to know the entire works of Shakespeare, right? Probably we could focus it on current events and weather patterns and things like that. So yeah, I think AI engines that act on very limited data, I think will become increasingly popular in certain domains and will be a way to input more AI into systems that don't have some of the computing power that others have. So yep, I would bet the ranch on small language models. Okay, any other comments, questions from anybody? Okay, well, thank you. I think it took a little bit more of my time, but thank you for the information. And again, if you're interested, please check out this course. Go to our website if you're interested in other courses that we do in AI, and I hope you'll reach out to me if we can provide a training program or some strategy ideas for your organization. Thanks again for your time and energy.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that presentation. It's definitely interesting.
So there's a question in the chat asking about the RU cert. And yes, RU certificates will be emailed. They will be attached to a thank you letter which will also include a link to a survey. Please let us know about your experience, everything from registration all the way through all the events of this program. And that thank you letter will be coming out in the next 1 to 2 weeks. We try to get it out within a week, but it always depends upon our volunteers' work schedule. But we try to get it out in a timely manner. And those certificates will be emailed to whatever email address you use to register with. That's the one we have on file through our Zoom account. So you should be receiving those again within a week, maybe 2 at the most. Really depends on our VOC chair. So I believe, Rob, we're coming into the networking part of the agenda before we move into business news.
Yeah, oh, that's right. I can't remember her name now.
Yes. So I know we have at least one guest who would like to introduce herself. Her name is Madeline Bast. She is a soon-to-be graduating student, and she's just interested in looking for possible job opportunities. So, Madeline, if you'd like to unmute yourself and share a little bit about you and what your experiences are and what you're looking for.
Yeah, hi. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes. Good evening.
Perfect. Hi. Yeah, my name's Madeline. I'd first like to thank Sam Chang for giving me the opportunity to be on here tonight. I'm really grateful for it. So yeah, I am graduating this weekend. Actually, I walk in commencement on Saturday from Northern Michigan University with my Bachelor's of Science in mechanical engineering technology and a concentration in computer numerical controls. I am currently working for a medical device manufacturer as a intern. The first about 3 months of my internship were mainly focused on hands-on experience, working on the floor, on machines, from mills to Swiss turning, doing secondary processes, and a lot of quality work. For the second half of my internship, I've transitioned into more of a office role, working really closely with our engineering team, production team, operations, and sales. I've put together a lot of quotes for customers, as well as I work a lot on our scheduling, making sure that our production is running smoothly and everybody has the right information that they need. I'm going to be moving to the Phoenix area in the new year, and I'm just really open to any opportunities just to even get to talk to people about the careers that are out there and kickstart my experience and get to learn a lot more. So, yeah, that's about me. And thank you for the opportunity to be here. It was really informational and fun.
Great. I know. So you're not currently a member of ASQ, right?
I am not.
Okay. And the only reason I'm questioning is, so ASQ has a website called My ASQ. They have a site called asq.org, and that's more about the organization. But then they have a complementary site called my.asq.org. And that's where all the different sections and divisions, as well as headquarters staff, they each have what's called a small community website. So they're all of the organization's websites are part of this platform called my.asq.org. Much of the content is available only to members, but there are pieces of content that are open to everybody. So I'm not sure which is which, but if you were to go navigate to that site, one of the top links in the top menu bar is communities. And if you're to click on that, for example, you could search for the Phoenix section. And I believe the discussion tab is open to anybody to view. It's just that if you're not a member, you can't reply, you can't comment, you can't react to what's presented, but you have visibility to whatever is on that discussion page. And within the Phoenix section, that discussion page is where we have job positions, job openings. And we have a person who goes in every month and updates. Now, I just look, she hasn't posted anything for the last couple months, but
Mhm.
I could certainly, in the chat, I can tell you her name and give you a contact information.
Yeah, that'd be
But
great.
so if you're specific to the Phoenix area in greater Arizona,
Hmm.
again, there's that community site called Phoenix Section. Navigate to the
Gotcha.
discussion tab, and then that pops, it opens directly into our jobs board. And you can scroll through the list, and she's got job postings by some months she's posting 16 a week. So it comes and goes, but there are a
Hmm.
lot of job postings there. I don't know how many have been filled or not, but that's one place you can look beyond, of course, establishing personal contacts and acquaintances and building your network down here. But feel free,
Gotcha.
you can attend our program meetings there every month on the second Thursday, always at 6 p.m. And they're free and open to the public. So another great way to meet people and build your network that way as well.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Thank you.
So if any of you who are in the Phoenix area are aware that whether your employer might have some job openings, I would encourage you to please follow up with Madeline and let her know that at least somebody is out looking for some entry-level positions. So
Mhm.
again, thank you for attending tonight, Madeline. And
Yeah,
hopefully
thank
this
you
was
guys.
of value to you as someone entering into the job market and
For sure.
more about experiences and skills that you should be considering under development for your future career.
Hmm. Yeah,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you. Anybody else who's on the call who would like to talk about whether they're looking for a career broadening move, or maybe whether your employer has some openings, feel free to share those with the group and or directly with Madeline if you prefer. But that's what this networking session is all about, is trying to help and encourage our peers and colleagues. So if you have any possibilities, please feel free to share. Okay. Well, not hearing any other comment, I guess we can move into the business part. Does anybody have anything they want to share, talk about, any particular challenges they're facing at work, that like some input from the audience? Or I know even though this is only a group of about 63 or 56 now currently, a lot of people prefer even smaller groups to have networking opportunities. It's one of the things we miss about the in-person events, where you can just shake hands and greet people one-on-one and interact in even smaller groups. But someday we'll get back to having in-person events. Our arrangements chair is currently looking at some opportunities for several different sessions this coming year. So, well, I thank everybody for attending. Go ahead, Rob. I think move on to the business news section
Yeah.
news.
The more of just a reminder for everybody, and kind of do a deeper dive into what Bob was talking about on my ASQ. So, um, first off, this is the 2025 Phoenix Section Leadership Team. This is what you would see on the My ASQ website. Um, After January 1st, this will be updated to the changes to the section leadership team for 2026. And I guess at this point, since this will be really the last time for me, thank everyone, all the volunteers who have worked diligently through 2025 for the section. And a good number of our volunteers will be staying over for next year, but in some cases we will have new members. So we'll have a new chair and we'll have a new treasurer next year. And then some other positions will also change. And this is our list of 2026 section leadership team. And this, like I said, it'll be our My ASQ website for Phoenix will be updated sometime after January 1st with contact information for all of our new volunteers. So continue on with that. We're always looking for volunteers. There's various other positions that we could all use help for. And going forward, it'd probably be best to contact obviously the new chairman. But in the meantime, you can contact Bob Mitchell or myself if you're interested, and they'll make sure that we'll get your name passed on. And basically, we have our section leadership committee meetings on the first Tuesday of every month. We have the member program every second Tuesday of the month. There's for the different volunteer positions, there are monthly duties, and they all vary, and some of them are really just a matter of just a few hours a month to help out with the section. So if you're interested, please give us your name. So take a deeper dive into what Bob was talking about. This is my ASQ for the Phoenix section. And so you've got tabs up at the top if you've not visited our section. And one of the tabs is events, which would be where we would post any upcoming events, obviously, conferences and so forth. This is also the place where, as Bob was talking about, open positions that get posted. And then we have our library where we have our recordings. Speaking of recordings,